Well, at the end of last year, I skied to the South Pole with this group of women. That's me at the end there. And this photo was taken at the moment that we arrived at the geographic South Pole after skiing 900 kilometres in 38 days. And having arrived at the South Pole, the 7 women could lay claim to quite a few different records between us. So among us we had the first Cypriot to ski to the South Pole, the first Bruneian to ski to the South Pole, the first woman from India, the first woman from New Zealand, and the first woman from Singapore to ski to the South Pole. But for us, and particularly for me, it was the fact that this team had got together in the first place that was the hugest achievement. We'd all met for the first time just 8 months previously. Over 800 women had applied to join the expedition team from all over the Commonwealth, and 2 women from each of the countries involved were invited to Norway at the beginning of last year. And for many of the women, when they arrived in Norway, it was the first time they'd ever seen snow. For most of them, it was the first time they'd ever experienced sub-zero temperatures, and it was certainly the first time they'd ever been asked to sleep in a tent at minus 27 degrees in a Norwegian blizzard, that was for sure. So they were really starting from ground zero. They had no previous experience in most cases whatsoever. And so it was quite a slow process to slowly build up confidence. The reason why they were all there was because out of that group we had to select our team of 8 for the South Pole. And we weren't really looking for the fastest skiers or the strongest athletes. Instead, we were looking for women who really enjoyed the challenge of coping in that environment, who really got on well with that particular group, who worked well with the people there, and also people who had a specific reason for wanting to go on this expedition. I wanted to kind of debunk the myth that you had to be superhuman to do an expedition like this. I was looking for ordinary women who just wanted an adventure and a chance to show what they could do, and somebody that everybody else could identify with. So let me introduce you to a few of them. Sophia Pang from Singapore, 37-year-old mother of 3, and when she was filling in the application form for the expedition, her teenage daughter said to her, "Oh God, Mum, it'd be a miracle if you get chosen, don't even bother." So she said that her reason for wanting to be in the team was to show her daughter that miracles sometimes do happen and that it was okay to dream big. Reena is 39 years old and she's from Darjeeling in India, and she's a trekking guide in the Himalayas, and she had to fight very hard for the right to be a trekking guide in the Himalayas. Her parents said, "You know, you're ruining your life, you'll never get married." Well, she's now married to a 3-time Everest mountaineer. He's summited Everest 3 times, and she wanted to encourage more women in India to get involved in the outdoors and the outdoors industry. We got quite a lot of encouragement, our little fledgling team, but we also attracted quite a lot of scepticism. The South Pole is a hard place to get to. It's challenging and it's dangerous. You don't take novices to the South Pole. You certainly don't take 5-foot-tall novices from tropical countries to the South Pole. And so pretty much every reason why we were going to fail was flung at us, from warnings that the girls from tropical countries wouldn't be able to acclimatise, to being told that the smaller members of the team were too petite to be able to pull a fully laden sledge. There are other difficulties too. As the leader of this team, it was just difficult to communicate with everyone. They were spread over 6 different time zones, so it was very hard to find a time when we could all speak together without someone being up at 3 in the morning or some other hideous time. But we persevered and we worked really hard. And in November 2009, we finally arrived in Antarctica. And the plan was that we would spend a week in a base camp acclimatising before we set off on the expedition proper. But our second night in Antarctica, we got hit by an 80-mile-an-hour wind storm that carried fist-sized lumps of ice in the wind. It was absolutely horrendous, and we watched as our tents were completely destroyed. The wind split the tents literally in half, down the floor, up the door and across the roof. The poles broke, and the jagged ends of the poles tore through the outer fabric and literally shredded our tent. Antarctica, you can't get spares easily, so our only option was to mend the tent with what we had, which in this case was glue and a bit of cotton thread. So as we were desperately trying to mend our tents, we were hit by a second disaster. Kim from Jamaica woke up in the morning and said, "Oh, Felicity, I've got blisters on the tips of my fingers." Blisters in Antarctica mean only one thing, and that's that you've got frostbite. Frostbite is when your flesh literally freezes, and the trouble is if you then refreeze that damaged flesh, that's when you start going all round of fines and losing fingers and things. So really for Kim there was no option but to get the first flight out of Antarctica and to go home. So, for the team, we hadn't even started our expedition yet, and we'd watched both our tents get destroyed and had to send home a team member on the plane. And, it was a real critical moment for all of us. And for me, that was the moment at which I realised that I had an amazing team and that there was nothing that was going to stop them, because not one of those women burst into tears and wanted to go home. Not one of the women ever suggested that we give up. It was all about how we got ourselves back on track and how we got ourselves to the South Pole. And that tenacity paid off, because 38 days later we walked into the South Pole and we'd completed our journey. But I think the reason why I enjoy sharing our story, and particularly this bit of the story, is because whatever you decide to do in life, there will always, guaranteed, be lots of people out there giving you very good reasons why you will never ever succeed. And yet our story proves if these women can ski to the South Pole with little or no previous experience, with no physical advantages, and with many, many people saying we had no hope whatsoever, if they can ski to the South Pole, then the really important question is, well, what is it that you can do? And even more important than that, when are you going to start? And that's really the thought that I'd like to leave you with. Thank you very much.